Hello, and welcome to Escaping the Echo Chamber. I know it's been a while. I'm actually really excited that this is going to be my first video posted in a while. I've done some other videos, but this one is very topical and there's a lot of attention around this issue right now. So I'm really glad that this is going to be my first video back after a hiatus. Let me get down to it. Oh, well, welcome to Escaping the Echo Chamber. Of course, as always, make sure to like, subscribe, share this, comment, because some people are going to agree. A lot of people are not going to agree. I want to hear from everybody. So basically what I'm talking about today is prisoners' voting rights. It's in the news right now. Bernie Sanders has, at the last town hall, CNN town hall, he was asked about giving prisoners voting rights, and he supports it. First of all, I want to say, based upon what I've seen of Bernie, this does not strike me as bravery or profound, authenticity, because Bernie is from Vermont. Vermont has allowed prisoners to vote since correction. I got that wrong. Vermont has allowed prisoners to vote since 1793. I almost messed up and said 1973. No, it's not 1973. Since 1793, Vermont has allowed prisoners to vote. Okay. Bernie Sanders has been the mayor of Vermont from the 80s, the House representative, the congressperson from Vermont. He's a mayor in Vermont, Burlington, Vermont. So Vermont is the state. He was a mayor of a city in Vermont, Burlington. He was the congressperson from Vermont, from 90 until 2007. And in 2007, he became the senator of Vermont, which he is still currently the senator of Vermont. So we're talking from 80 to 2019. You have been a public official within Vermont. And for you to just now come out and say, oh, yes, I'm in favor of prisoners voting, does not strike me as particularly brave, because you've had a lot of time to address the issue. You've had a lot of time to advance policy and bills, laws, to draft bills on the issue to bring this about to other states. So for you to now, when you're running for president and where there's a rush to lean left, because make no mistake about it, there is an incredible fight to the left right now. Now you're saying, okay, boom, I've got a trump card. That's not, I don't consider that authentic. I don't consider that particularly brave. But hey, maybe you can find something from Bernie that shows that he was vocal about prisoners voting before now. I know I've seen a clip of him in 2015, 2016, during that election, talking about how prisoners should have the right to vote, how people who have been convicted after they're released should get their voting rights back. That's a lot different than prisoners being able to vote while in prison. And to put that in context, in 2017, myself and the Libertarian Party of New York passed a resolution to restore the voting rights of prisoners in 48 other states and DC. 2017. So when you want to talk about ahead of the curve, let's just remember where libertarians are, because we're not the only libertarians that have spoken on this issue, that have advocated this issue. I believe the gubernatorial candidate from Wisconsin also, which was interesting because I used to live in Wisconsin. And it was just like interesting that despite us never communicating on the issue, that's an issue that he came forward with himself. So there are libertarians all over this country that have been fighting for this issue, pushing for this issue, and I'm glad that there's a record of it, so that people can't say that. But hey, I mean, that's pretty much indicative of a lot of things, that the Democrats are late on issues and then try to claim credit for it when libertarians were for these issues long before anyone. But let's get into the meat and potatoes of the issue. Prisoners have the right to vote. So there is a lot of debate on this topic. There's a lot of emotion on this topic. And when I say a lot of emotion, I mean, it's like 99% of emotion. And if you're on the other side, the people who are saying that prisoners shouldn't be voted, it's 100% emotion. Because I keep asking people, give me the legal reasons. Give me your legal justification for stripping voting rights from prisoners. I'll wait. I'm still waiting. Well, I'll be doing other things while I'm waiting, because I know it's not going to come. This is what's happening. I mean, I've been on Twitter, just back and forth, and people are just oblivious. They will say, prisoners don't have rights, which is utterly ridiculous and utterly without any basis in fact, reality, or law. But this is what's happening, because people just spout stuff that they know absolutely nothing about, but they feel really strongly about it. But guess what? The Constitution doesn't care about your feelings. To borrow a phrase from Ben Shapiro, who, ironically enough, is one of the people whose feelings are on the other side of the issue. But once again, even you, Ben, the Constitution doesn't care about your feelings. It's a fact. Prisoners do retain many rights. There are some limits placed on those rights, but prisoners do not lose all rights upon entering prison, despite what many people like Meghan McCain would want. For those of you who aren't familiar, Meghan McCain on The View, she was addressing the issue, and because the issue at the CNN town hall became not about the 2.3 million prisoners that are incarcerated in the United States, but it became about one prisoner who is incarcerated in the United States, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, the Boston bomber. And it was under that, to call it a straw man is overly generous. But it is through that lens that the debate was formed that, Bernie wants terrorists to vote. Never mind the other 2.3 million people that are affected by this and have been disenfranchised. Let's talk about the one person whom people have decided to make this about. So yeah, Meghan McCain is on The View and talking about how he's a terrorist and terrorists shouldn't have any rights. Okay, that's the way you feel, but the way you feel has no basis in reality, in fact, or in law. None whatsoever. Once again, to you also, Meghan McCain, the Constitution doesn't care about your feelings, because prisoners, including Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, retain rights. So he maintains due process rights. He retains First Amendment rights, because yes, he is free to practice his religion while he is in prison. He retains several other rights. He retains the Eighth Amendment right against cruel and unusual punishment, because even though he's done something heinous, the Constitution doesn't say, but if you do something we really don't like, all bets are off. It's not what the Constitution says. That may be the way you feel, but that's not the way the law works. So, one of the interesting things to notice is the phrasing that, in fact, the discussion that they had on The View, and the phrasing that Chris Cuomo used in terms of, so are you saying, he said to Bernie, are you saying that that the Boston bomber, not after he gets out, but while he's inside, not after he's paid his debt to society, that he should be allowed the right to vote? And Bernie says, okay, yeah. For those of you that don't understand, the Boston bomber was sentenced to death. He has the death sentence. after his sentence is served, he's not going to be, that's the one time he's not going to be exercising any rights. Okay. So he has the death sentence. He's not getting out. He's not getting out. Well, yeah, he's not getting out alive. He's going to be leaving. He's going to be leaving AdMax in a body bag. That's what it is. So, but it just points to the ridiculousness of this conversation, because somebody has chosen to frame this debate not around the multitudes of people who are being disenfranchised, but about one person that you can say, okay, yeah, well, that person's really evil. Yeah, let me really skew the issue by taking the most extreme version, most extreme example, and crafting an entire argument, an entire policy around the most extreme example. It's utterly ridiculous. That's utterly absurd. So for all the people saying prisoners voting in prison is absurd, no. Crafting an argument around one individual out of 2.3 million people, that is absurd. That's ridiculous. That's not good faith. That's not intelligent. That's just utterly idiotic. But let's keep going, because if you take a look at a couple of things, there are 2 states in the United States that actually do allow their prisoners to vote. Those 2 states are Maine and Vermont. And I want to make the point that there are 2 states in the United States that currently have allowed inmates the right to vote. So we talked about Vermont, but there's also Maine. But those are the 2 states, the only 2 states to have ever done it. So Utah, at one point in time, allowed prisoners the right to vote. New Hampshire had it. It became law, and then they overturned it and took away prisoners' voting rights. But you know what other state had it? Massachusetts. But Massachusetts, once the Boston bombing happened, they decided, okay, we can't have prisoners voting because we can't let the Boston bomber vote. No, that's not why they did it. But it just goes to show you the absurdity. Massachusetts Massachusetts prisoners at one point had the right to vote, but they didn't lose the right to vote because of the Boston bomber. They lost the right to vote because a governor was upset that prisoners formed a political action committee challenging the phone company that was getting the contracts and charging exorbitant rates. That's why they lost the right to vote. Not because of the Boston bomber. But nice try. They lost it because they actually got together and used nonviolent, pro-social, political means to achieve benefits in their incarceration. That's what they were trying to accomplish. They were trying to stop rampant exploitation and possibly corruption by these contracts for phone calls being given to a company that was gouging them and their loved ones. But that's when the governor says, whoa, we got to stop this. So that's the reality. The reality is, this isn't about the Boston bomber. This is not about Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. This is about the powerful and the powerless. That's what this is about. This is about trying to make sure that the people that are being kept in these prisons have little to no recourse to affect their conditions, to fight back against anything the government may do. That's a problem. But if you're not in prison, you may say, I don't care. But when you have things like the SAFE Act, which turn legal gun owners into felons overnight. Jersey just did a whole bunch of, another firearms ban. But when you have laws like this being passed, you can easily wind up in that situation. And then you will say, oh, this is crazy. How do we do this? How do we challenge this? How come we have no power? That's because you weren't paying attention when you were on the other side. Now that you wind up on the inside, you don't have the ability to change anything. And make no mistake about it, there are those who want to strip prisoners of all their rights, who want prisoners to not be able to do anything to change their situation. But once again, I tell you, there are people that want this. The Constitution doesn't allow this. The Constitution doesn't go along with this. But if people aren't educated, people don't know what's really going on or what the law says, they can wind up falling for anything and allowing all kinds of government overreach, government malfeasance. But that's not where we're going to end. Like I said, I brought this conversation to people and I say, hey, if you disagree, if you feel that prisoners should not have the right to vote, give me your legal arguments. They give me nothing. They give me emotion. They give me the social contract. By the way, take the social contract into a courtroom and see where that lands you. Seriously, go into a courtroom and say, oh, but the social contract, when the judge stops laughing and your whatever argument motion is dismissed, then you realize, oh, that wasn't really a legal argument. No, it wasn't. It's a ridiculous argument. I do have legal basis because that's the point. The whole point is I know that we can effectuate getting the other 48 states prison voting rights restored. We can change the tide, and it's not even going to see, giving legislatures the option is always a step. But if that's all this, if we're just going to be dependent upon legislatures to decide, okay, we're going to grant this, it's not going to happen. You need more. And that's why I have legal arguments backing me. And that's why I know you can't come up with legal arguments to say why prisoners shouldn't have the right to vote, because I've done the research and I'm going to be preparing the briefs, template briefs that I will send to prisoners who are from the various states so that they can file these actions challenging the infringement and their disenfranchisement of their voting rights. Because there's so much to this issue that people don't fully understand. And it's interesting that people talk about that if prisoners are given the right to vote, that, well, sometimes they're in these areas that aren't heavily populated, and the prisoners may vote some, bad person into office over the will of the residents that are non-prisoners. But why are prisoners being counted in that area in the first place? See, that's what that is. When the people make complaints about this, I have no sympathy. Why do I have no sympathy? Because that means that right now, while these prisoners do not have the right to vote, you are counting these prisoners, these bodies in that area to give your population, to give your area, your district, your community greater political power. So you're exploiting, you're stealing the political power of whatever communities these prisoners are coming from. You're stealing their political power to give your district and your community more clout. That's why I have no sympathy. Because if you had not been disingenuous and said, hey, wait a minute, they can't vote. Why are we counting them? We shouldn't be counting them here. They should be counted in the communities where they come from. But you wanted a benefit that you weren't entitled to. That's why if prisoners are able to vote within these communities, don't cry now. You had no problem exploiting their political representation. You had no problem having them counted in your district when they couldn't vote. Don't cry now. But that's something that a lot of people aren't familiar with. They aren't familiar with the prison gerrymandering that's happening, of how political power from other communities is being stolen to these rural areas where they're building these prisons. People aren't paying attention to that. People aren't aware of that. And that's why these buildings of prisons, and it's not just private prisons, they're building prisons, which are many times state-owned, federally owned, are just are businesses, are boons to their area, not just economically, but politically, because they're stealing somebody else's representation. No sympathy from me. But when you get to the law, when you get to people saying that, oh, prisoners shouldn't have the right to vote, or prisoners lose their rights when they get into prison, and I say, well, because as Turner v. Safely says, it's a Supreme Court case, look it up, Turner versus Safely, Turner versus Safely, Turner versus Safely, prison walls do not form a barrier separating prison inmates from the protections of the Constitution. That's the quote. Look it up. And if you disagree with me, I welcome you to come forward with some legal basis for why prisoners are stripped of their rights legally. And since you won't have that, feel free to comment, feel free to vent, feel free to talk about how wrong I am. Like, I've got one guy on Twitter who I will quote case law, and he'll show me, and he'll just restate an argument that has no basis. Another guy who then shows a Google search, like, okay, so prisoners don't vote. What state are they talking about? Because they're clearly not talking about all the states, and you're clearly not giving me a legal argument. Please do better. Thank you for checking out the episode. That's all I have for this episode. So, as I said before, if you're new to the channel, welcome to Escaping the Echo Chamber. Give me a like, give me a share. If you disagree with me, hey, give me a thumbs down, comment, attack me. Just go off, have fun, have at it. Because I look forward to proving a lot of people wrong. That's what I do. Check me out in the next episode.